In a hybrid, AI-assisted workplace, one project can pass through meetings, chats, shared documents, automated outputs, and people who never occupy the same room. The team finishes, the result is praised, and 3 months later, nobody can cleanly reconstruct who analyzed the problem, tested the fix, coordinated the launch, or approved the final decision. That does not prove anyone stole credit. Maya, the reliable Black Crow employee, treats it as an information problem. When the work cannot be retrieved, future memory fills the gaps unevenly. Her answer is a one-page project recap. It is not a victory speech, a private scorecard, or a claim that every outcome belongs to her. It is a shared factual index that makes the project easier to inspect later. The goal is modest. Record what the team intended to do, what was delivered, which decisions changed the path, who handled each observable contribution, where the approved evidence lives, what remains open, and who owns the next step. Recognition may still vary, but the record no longer depends entirely on memory. The first block states the original goal in 1 or 2 precise sentences. Under it, Maya records the delivered outcome, completion date or milestone, and one verified result if the team has a reliable measure. She does not upgrade a hope into a metric or claim an effect the project never measured. If the scope changed, she records the approved change rather than rewriting the original goal. A reader should be able to answer 3 questions quickly. What problem was addressed? What actually shipped? And what evidence confirms the final state? The contribution block uses observable verbs instead of vague ownership. The gray rabbit coordinated stakeholder schedules. The neutral deer teammate analyzed customer feedback. The badger quality specialist tested the release and documented the failure cases. The tawny owl manager approved the scope change. Maya drafted the operating plan and delivered the final handoff. Drafted, analyzed, reviewed, tested, coordinated, approved, and delivered point toward actions that can be checked. They are more useful than saying one person drove everything or another person was invaluable without explaining what happened. Specific attribution does not require turning the recap into a competition. Maya can write that the team delivered the outcome, then name the distinct work that made it possible. If 2 roles overlapped, she records the overlap. If a decision was collective, she says so. If someone reviewed rather than authored a document, the verb should reflect that difference. Proportional language protects the credibility of the whole record. When every person is described as owning everything, the recap becomes praise without information, and future readers still cannot trace the work. Next comes the evidence trail. Each important statement connects to an approved artifact, a project brief, decision record, analysis, test result, delivery file, stakeholder sign-off, or final handoff. The recap does not copy every file into a new location. It links to the authorized source system and respects existing permissions. Sensitive material remains in the repository where it belongs. The one-page document functions as an index, so a future manager, reviewer, or teammate can retrieve the underlying evidence without searching through months of unrelated messages. A credible closeout also shows what did not disappear when the project was called complete. Maya lists open risks, unresolved defects, deferred decisions, follow-up dates, and the next owner. This prevents the recap from presenting a polished ending while responsibility quietly falls between roles. It also protects the next owner from inheriting a vague problem. The handoff should identify the current state, the evidence, the decision already made, and the next observable action. Completion and remaining work can coexist in the same accurate record. Before the recap becomes final, Maya invites correction. Her note is neutral. Here is the result. Here is who handled each part. Here are the source links, and please correct anything I missed. The rabbit adds a missing stakeholder workshop. The badger corrects the test date. The owl clarifies who approved a change. Maya updates the record. This correction window matters because one person's complete memory is still one person's perspective. A shared record becomes stronger when omissions can be repaired before the document is later used as evidence. Timing and audience should remain disciplined. Sending near project close helps because artifacts and decisions are still retrievable. Sending to everyone in the company does not make the record better. The audience should include the team, project lead, and stakeholders who need the closeout or handoff. The recap can live in the normal project system rather than a new public channel. Visibility is not the same as broadcasting. The purpose is to make approved facts available to the people responsible for decisions, reviews, support, or future work. The recap also preserves ambiguity where evidence stops. It can show that the Deer analyzed feedback and Maya drafted the response plan. It cannot prove what a manager privately valued, why a stakeholder later forgot a contribution, or how a future review will be scored. It should not accuse a colleague of preparing to steal credit. Overlapping roles, scattered communication, changing scope, and unequal stakeholder exposure are ordinary alternative explanations. The record helps the team discuss observable work without converting uncertainty about motive into a conflict the evidence cannot support. Some situations are more serious than a project documentation problem. Repeated disputes involving compensation, retaliation, discrimination, policy, or significant harm may require the organization's normal manager, HR, union, legal, or professional support route as appropriate. A recap can preserve dates and approved evidence, but it does not guarantee an HR decision, a rating, a promotion, or a legal outcome. Maya keeps the document factual, confidential, and proportional, so it remains useful if a formal process later needs a reliable chronology rather than an emotional reconstruction. The format should stay light enough to repeat. A recap that demands a week of extra work will be skipped when the next deadline arrives. Maya uses the approved artifacts the team already created, removes duplication, and links to detail instead of copying it. The value comes from consistent retrieval, not ornamental polish. A plain, accurate index produced at every close is stronger than one elaborate record created only after a credit dispute begins. Months later, the project no longer depends on whoever speaks first or remembers last. A reviewer can retrieve the goal, outcome, decisions, contributions, evidence, open items, and handoff from one concise index. That is the practical payoff, not guaranteed credit, but traceable work. The next improvement happens before project close. A short weekly update can keep contributions, trade-offs, blockers, and outcomes visible while the work is still moving, so the final recap does not have to rebuild an invisible project from fragments. For a connected episode already available, watch why recent work can dominate a performance review.